Hello and good afternoon. I hope everyone is doing well. I must say good afternoon, good morning, and good evening as well, as we are currently in Sydney. So thanks for joining us on this another topic with Dr. Frank on CBTC Success Secrets. I just would like to request everyone who's joining us today to just mention in our chat box that where they are dialing in from. So it would be interesting to see where people are dialing in from and understand the audience. In the meantime, welcome, Dr. Frank, and thanks again for presenting the topic on CBTC today.
Thank you
Uh,
very much, Imran. Over to me.
yeah, I think we are just waiting for people to join. So probably maybe in a few seconds we will join. So we have Sorin from Sydney. Welcome, Sorin. Thanks for joining in. So yeah, we still give like maybe some more few seconds for people to join in. And then yeah, we shortly start. Oh wow, we have someone from Scotland, Brian from Scotland, Amric from United Kingdom. So welcome. I hope you're having a nice early start of the day. Um, thank you. Alex from Brisbane, Rajesh from Brisbane. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Frank, I think we have a very sort of a mixed audience, all the way from the UK to Australia. So, which is really good to see. Without any further delay, I will just probably introduce Dr. Frank Heibel. Dr. Frank is basically a chartered professional electrical engineer for over 33 years of international experience in railway signaling. He is widely known in the industry as Doc Frank. So he's always called as Doc Frank, which is very easy to go by. He has a very specialized skills in training and consultation for advanced communication based signaling, including CBTC, ETCS technologies, and obviously it's the most cost-effective way, to improve the uh, capacity and performance of the urban and mainline railways. So I would, with this, hand over to Doc Frank and to share his insights for today.
Thank you very much, Imran. Hello, everyone. The starting time of this webinar is later than for previous ones, 4 hours later. The reason for that was to make it easier for people from the European market and from markets in between, like the Middle East, to join the webinar without starting the day too early. So I hope that works out, and I hope it didn't impact the Australian participants too much. I can't really say what your prior knowledge is of signaling, railway signaling, or CBTC. So what I'm trying generally in my training courses and also in the webinar here is to explain things in a way that everybody can understand. So it doesn't really matter whether you consider yourself a signaling person or a non-signaling person, and you probably know quite well in which of the two camps you belong. I really try to make it for everybody so that everybody can understand. So on top of the introduction that Imran just gave for me, a couple of other things. As he said, I'm in the industry for, well, I just say over 30 years, because guess what? Every time it changes. So I think it's about 34 years by now, almost on the day. I think yesterday, 34 years ago, I started in the industry. The first 20 years of my career, I spent with several international suppliers of signaling systems, not just one, but different ones. And the last 14 years of my career, I spent as an independent strategy consultant and trainer for advanced signaling technologies, including CBTC and ETCS and everything related to that. Predominantly how to improve capacity with modern signaling systems, because it has always been a pet peeve of mine that people from other disciplines said, you signaling guys, you are the big capacity obstacle. So when we have modern signaling technologies these days that allow for higher capacity, that's exactly what I was after pretty much my entire career. So because of my background, like having worked for 20 years on the supplier side and 14 years on the client side, I have a very good perspective of both sides. So I understand both sides, how they are thinking. And quite often I can explain to the other side what the one side is thinking, which is quite helpful. Regarding training, I started off with a CBTC training, which at the time was called CBTC Kickstarter in 2014. At the time, whether you believe it or not, that was the only CBTC training in the world that was publicly available to everyone. But at the time, it was a live training. We started in Sydney. So people really had to travel to Sydney in person to basically sit the training with me. Later on, when COVID hit, I pivoted, like many live trainers, pivoted to what I call live online. So the format is like Zoom calls like this one, but with participants, well, being able to see me and I'm being able to see the participants. And then most recently, we moved entirely to online trainings where we have pre-recorded video sessions. The benefit there is that you can basically watch the lessons at any point in time from anywhere. So you don't have to sit in front of the computer at a certain time of the day, which may be the middle of the night. If you are somewhere in America, for example, you can basically watch the video lessons on demand, which makes it much more palatable for many people in different time zones. And as I just mentioned, in all my training courses and also these webinars here, I'm really trying to achieve a 100-100 objective, what I call 100-100, which means I want everybody listening to understand everything. So 100% of the people listening to understand 100% of the content. And this is across rare disciplines. So I have trained people from the signaling industry, of course, but also from other disciplines like rolling stock people, train drivers, traffic controllers, even people from non-technical disciplines like procurement people, health and safety, transport investigators. It's pretty much across the bank. And they were all able to learn something, often surprisingly much from their perspective, because of the way I'm teaching my content. So for today's webinar, I must say I was a bit shocked when I saw the announcement by Informa, because we didn't really talk too much about what it is, other than it's about CBTC and success secrets. And this is what they promised when they advertised the webinar. So the first thing was why some CBTC projects thrive while others fall short. The second promise was how to apply CBTC way to optimize capacity. The third one was gaining strategies for RAI professionals across all disciplines. And to an extent, I just explain how that works by me explaining it simply enough that every practice in CBTC implementation. Just quickly, Imran, I get messages here that the internet connection is not the best. So just let me know when I drop out, and then I may have to change channels and come back in a moment. Yeah. Just
sure,
let
sure.
me know, because I can't say how the reception is on the other side. So you need to give me some feedback there, please.
Yeah, sure. There was a little bit of lag, just like a few seconds ago, but I think now it's working fine. But I'll definitely give you a heads up.
So if that gets works, I'm currently working on Starlink, but we have like lots of clouds here. It shouldn't really do too much damage, but if it gets too bad, then I have an alternative connection here. But then I would have to switch over and will be gone for like a few seconds. So just let me know when it gets too bad.
Sure, no worries, no worries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So So I'm trying my best. I mean, obviously, those 4 promises to deliver on all this, I can probably talk to you for like 3 years solid. I'm trying my best to give you answers as good as possible, whatever fits into 1 hour. And there's also a giveaway at the end and also a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions on anything that I'm talking to you about, just put the questions in the chat. And then Imran will address this at the end, read them back to me, and then I'm answering your questions at the end of it. So stay around to the end, because this is when I will address those 4 promises explicitly. And we're also addressing your questions that you may come up with. So let's just dissect the title of this webinar, CBTC Success Secret. So that's very often how I like to start my trainings, actually defining what we are talking about. And the first one there is obviously the term CBTC. So what is that? In case you don't know, if you do know, then like bear with me for a moment. It will get more interesting for you in a second. CBTC is an acronym that stands for Communications-Based Train Control. And what it does, it's an established global mainstream technology for train control, which basically means controlling the operation of trains. And by established, I mean CBTC technology has been around for a long time. The first 2 projects for CBTC went into service as early as 1985. So that's now just 40 years ago. So it's definitely not a new technology, but it's still a very good technology, a very efficient technology, and obviously something that has been evolving over the last 40 years. The equipment used today is, of course, much more modern. I mean, if you think about developments in the computer industry, you can imagine that the computers used today for CBTC are no longer the same ones that they used like 10 years ago, let alone 40 years ago. I tend to refer to CBTC as the gold standard for optimizing signaling capacity. So if you really want to squeeze the maximum possible capacity out of a signaling system, CBTC is normally the technology you want to go with, provided that the railway application that you have is suitable for the use of CBTC. So that's why many city railways, so-called metros, are preferably using CBTC, because metros are well suited for CBTC in most cases, and this is the technology where they can get the maximum possible signaling capacity out. What's also interesting, I think, when defining CBTC or explaining what CBTC is that it's quite a big change from conventional signaling. Conventional signaling, as you know it, was like traffic lights on sticks, and also fixed block sections. So some of these step changes are, in CBTC, you have signaling equipment on board the train. And that's normally something that you don't have in conventional signaling. Everything is on the track side, everything is on the infrastructure, and then it's up to the train driver to look at the signals and interpret the signal aspects to know how to drive the train. In CBTC, you have computers on the train being part of the CBTC solution. So that's a big change. And often for a railway that introduces CBTC, it's the very first time that you have signaling equipment sitting on the train. A second big thing is cap signaling. Cap signaling means, and that's related to the first point, that the train driver has equipment on board of the train and the display on the driver's desk that gives instructions how to operate the train. So you have the signaling sitting in the cap of the train driver and no longer out there in the field on optical signals. A third big change is that CBTC does not rely on fixed block sections. So normally in a conventional railway, the railway line is segregated in several sections. And in each section you can only have one train. So that's a basic signaling principle of keeping trains apart so that they don't crash into each other. In CBTC, you don't need these fixed block sections. CBTC provides something which is called moving block, where every train has a defined safety zone around the train, which moves along with the train. So that's the definition of moving block, in case you didn't know and you wanted to have a very simple explanation of moving block. And the last example here is automatic train operation, which is basically a computer driving the train. In order to do that, you obviously need a computer on the train in the first place. So that's another proof of the first of those 4 bullet points. And again, automatic train operation is something that you never had before in a conventional signaling system. So let's go to the second part of the CBTC success secrets, and that's the word success. So what defines the success of CBTC? And I thought one good way of explaining this is to show you this. This is the classic so-called project management triangle, where the quality of the project delivery is a balance of cost and time and scope. So the success of CBTC means firstly that you have a CBTC project, a CBTC implementation that is delivered on time and on budget. So if you say a CBTC project takes 4 years, you don't want it to take 6 years or 7 years, because then you lose the benefits, or you only get them much later. And obviously, you only want to spend the amount of money that you budgeted for the project. You don't want it to cost like twice as much or 3 times as much. So you can certainly say a CBTC project is successful if it is delivered on time and on budget. That's not the only criteria, but that's definitely a couple of very important criteria. And you could certainly say that a CBTC project that is like 3 years late and costs twice as much as planned, it's not really that much of a success story. So regarding scope, that's the, on time, on budget are obviously the 2 corners of the triangle of cost and time. The third one, scope, basically means that the project delivers the benefits that are promised by introducing CBTC. What are some of those benefits? One is the provision of higher capacity, of higher signaling capacity that allows more trains to run on a railway line that is fitted with CBTC. Another of those benefits is operational reliability. That's a fancy term for making trains run on time more often. Yeah, and if there is a small delay that you can always have in a daily operating railway system, then CBTC should be capable of bringing trains back on recovering for minor delays and bringing trains back on the timetable. A third advantage is automation. So I already mentioned on the previous slide automatic train operation. So that's one example where CBTC is really meant to increase the level of automation, and by doing so, really fine-tune the efficiency of the railway in a way that wasn't possible before. And then some people also hope of cost savings from CBTC. CBTC itself, it's an expensive technology as far as signaling goes. It's certainly more expensive than conventional signaling. But on the other hand, there is potential for cost savings from CBTC. One possible cost saving is that you need less trackside equipment, and therefore also less cost for maintaining trackside signaling equipment. And another possibility of cost saving is to save on traction power when driving the trains in an ideal way with automatic train operation. So a bonus criteria of making a CBTC project successful, I think, is if you can deliver CBTC without losing any timetabled train services. How do you lose timetable train services? By shutting down the line. And that is the standard procedure how signaling projects are normally delivered. So you want to install new signaling equipment on the line, you shut down the railway so that you can do your installation work in peace and quiet. You want to test it, you shut down the railway line again for your testing in the field. When you want to commission it, take it into service, guess what? You shut down your railway again. And CBTC provides opportunities to do that without shutting down the railway. And some people think that's impossible because they have never experienced it like this in conventional signaling. So from their experience, they are right, but from a CBTC experience, they are wrong, because there are projects using CBTC that have done it successfully. The question is how. So let's come to the third part of the CBTC success secrets, and that's the secrets bit. Wow, that sounds pretty secretive. So what are those secrets, or what make a secret a secret? So I try to address this in a more generic way. So firstly, I would think a secret is something that's not obvious. Yeah, if everybody says, well, of course, this is what it is, then I don't think that's considered a secret. That's more like common sense or common knowledge or whatever. So one example is what I just mentioned, what I call zero disruption delivery. So delivering CBTC without losing a single timetable train service into an existing railway, many people would say, well, that's impossible. And if you say, well, actually it is possible, that's kind of a secret, because most people don't know how that works or how it could work. So that's what I would define as an example of a secret. A second characteristic, I think, of a secret is that it goes meta. So what I mean by this is you basically go one level up. So you're doing something, you're introducing CBTC through a project, but by doing it, you basically take it one level up and look at it more generically. I'll give you a couple of examples in case that's a bit too abstract. So one thing is that CBTC projects are complex by definition. That's just how CBTC is. You put equipment on the train, you put equipment on the wayside, you put equipment into the control center, you put in a new radio system connecting everything. So doing a project like this in an existing railway environment is complex, and there's nothing you can do about that complexity. But at the same time, you can implement it in different ways. So you can either make a complex CBTC project more complicated by doing things like in a very convoluted way, or you can try to avoid or minimize complications by keeping it as simple as possible. So what I mean by going meta is you basically go one level up, you take like a helicopter view on your CBTC project, and for everything you're doing there, you look at it and you say, is this as simple as possible, or can I make this any simpler without losing any scope, without losing any functionality, any benefits? So that's one example where you need to move a level up in order to look down on the project and say, okay, well, how can we avoid additional complications? How can we keep it as simple as possible? And another example is what I call a mindset. So when a railway that was used to operate on conventional signaling, when such a railway introduces CBTC with all those new things, with all those step changes, first time signaling equipment on trains, first time automatic train operation, first time you can get rid of your fixed block sections. You do that as a railway to boost your capacity, to really run many more trains than you used to run before. And that means that you need to change your entire operation. So it's not just a new signaling technology, you're really changing your entire operation. And in order to do that, your railway organization needs to change the mindset. The people working in the railway need to change their mindset from the old ways of conventional signaling at lower capacity to a new, more metro style, if you will, railway with higher capacity. So it's like a very different beast. It's becoming a very different organization. And that means you have to have some kind of a mindset shift. You cannot run the new service at higher capacity with the same thought patterns that you had before in the old world of signaling, because some of those old thought patterns could really stand in the way of going to a high capacity operation. And then lastly, the secrets for CBTC success. When I thought about this, I really thought about that most CBTC projects have very different success stories. So, and what you really want to do is some kind of a cherry picking of best practices. So you may find, well, if you have information across a number of CBTC projects, you may find that there's something that was done in, for example, Hong Kong that may be very useful for your project. There was maybe something done in North America where you say, yeah, well, that was nice for them, but it wouldn't really work for me. And then you may have something from, I don't know, the Middle East, say from Dubai, where you say, oh, this fits well again. So it's not just looking at one CBTC project and then saying, oh, well, we just copy and paste everything and then everything will be fine, when your environment is very different from the environment of that other CBTC project. That may not be the best solution. So ideally, you want to be able to cherry pick best practices across the globe from many different other CBTC projects. So, and I think the bottom line here is there is no one size fits all. So I would not know how to tell you this is how every CBTC project must be to be a huge success. Because the environments where CBTC projects are done, they are just too different in different countries, in different cities, in different railway environments. There's a big difference whether you just build a new railway with CBTC from day one, a so-called greenfield project, or whether you apply CBTC on an existing railway with conventional signaling, that's called the brownfield project. So the variety there from an environmental perspective is so great that you cannot have a one size fits all, like a blueprint for CBTC that is ideal for every project, regardless of where it is. So the question now, I think, how can you learn about this? How can you learn about CBTC success secrets? So if you are interested in CBTC and you want to set out and I want to learn the success secrets of CBTC, how can you do that? Well, the one thing is you can book travels and you can travel around the world to look at many different CBTC projects in order to find out what the best practice is. And you may say, well, there are certain things that were particularly good in France, and like in Paris, for example. There are other things that I liked a lot in London, and then I was in Copenhagen and they did a few very nice things. And then I traveled to America and you wouldn't believe what I saw there. Most people can't do that because they don't live long enough, they don't have the travel budget, they don't have the time to educate themselves on global best practice for like 25 years, spending 2 years here, 3 years there, 5 years over there. It normally doesn't work that way. Now, one way to kind of shortcut this learning process is going to a conference. So if you want to learn about CBTC, global best practices, you can go to a conference. Now, the problem is, at least for me in Australia and for most of the people sitting here in Australia or in Europe, most of the CBTC conferences are normally in the USA or Canada. So for example, every year, the IRSE, the Signaling Association, conducts a CBTC conference in Toronto, in Canada. Normally at the end of November or the first day of December, something around that. It's called CBTC and Beyond. So I wanted to go there once. So I contacted the organizer and they were quite welcoming. I said, of course, you are happy to come to Toronto. And yes, we let you speak. We give you a speaking slot for your presentation so you can talk about CBTC in Australia. So that was all very nice. And then I had a deeper look what it means for me to travel from Australia to Canada and participate in a conference in Canada. And what I found out was that all up, I would probably be around $10,000 short money-wise. And I would probably have to spend at least a week, if not more, to go from Australia to Canada to participate in the conference and go back. And if I catch any bug on the way, then I'm probably sick 2 weeks afterwards. But even without counting that, the effort was so big that I basically said, well, sorry, I can't do that. I can't afford that. And I heard it from many other people that they said, yeah, well, it's nice that they have these conferences there, but I really can't afford going there. And you see it at those conferences, the number of people from overseas is really quite limited. Very often the participants are just from the area or people that have a relatively short travel, short flight of a couple of hours or so, but people from other continents, very, very rare. So another way of doing it, you can try to find experts on the relevant topics, and then you can try to learn from them. But part of the problem there is, firstly, you need to find them, so who the real experts are on certain things, and then you need to convince them to teach you their secrets. And part of the problem is, do they even know what the secrets are? So they basically say, well, okay, what do you want to know? And then you say, well, I don't know. Tell me your secrets, I guess. And he said, well, I don't have any secrets. We just do a CBTC project and that's that. Well, then tell me about this. And you can kind of see where this conversation goes. It's going nowhere. Yeah, so at the end of the day, he's telling you something, and yes, you will be smarter after the discussion than before, but whether you really got into the juicy stuff, into the secret stuff, the success secrets, you probably don't know, and the other person doesn't know either. So, and then you have this topic of mindset. How do you change your mindset? What kind of mindset do you actually need for having a successful CBTC project? And the thing with mindset, this is a topic that I find is either completely ignored or neglected. So people say, well, yeah, I kind of can imagine that this is important, but I don't really know what to do about it. So we deal with that later. Or it's very underestimated, or say, well, it's a new signaling technology. So what do you say about mindset? We don't really need anything like that. Or even if you know about this, that it could be a problem, it could be a challenge, it's unmitigated because you just don't know how to address it. You just don't know what to do. So, and the railways that are introducing CBTC, very often they know exactly what the pain points are. They say, well, we're really struggling to transform our organization into the new world of CBTC. So they know the pain, they know what the problem is or what the challenge is, if you don't like the word problem, but no one really knows the remedy. They say, well, yeah, we've got a challenge here, but we don't really quite know how to address it. And the thing is that you have then the odd CBTC project that was really successful. But when you ask them, well, how did you successfully do the transformation of your railway? They say, well, I don't really know. We did a bit of training here and there and a bit of stakeholder information. And well, I guess we were lucky. Yeah. So more often than not, any success stories are more by accident than really in a structured and planned way. So what I've been doing for the last 10 years is offering CBTC training on the foundations of CBTC. So that's not necessarily the answer to the success secret or the search for success secrets, but it's definitely a good foundation. So And this is the approach that I'm taking for my CBTC trainings. And this is a drawing that I actually started doing like 10 years ago in 2014, before I did my very first CBTC training. I said, well, this is how I want to do it. I want to take people from a point A to a point B, and the point A may well be a point zero. So if you are a non-signaling person and you want to learn about CBTC for whatever reason, your prior knowledge of CBTC or signaling may be zero. So that's why I said A/0, because it could be that you're really starting from scratch. And the people being there at this point A very often feel overwhelmed and clueless. So overwhelmed because they heard a lot of different things about CBTC. It's such a complicated technology, and so sophisticated, and signaling is difficult anyway, so CBTC must be particularly difficult. So they feel often overwhelmed and clueless. And at the end of the training, in point B, I want them to feel confident and knowledgeable about CBTC. And the way that I do that in the training is via what I called milestone for results. So that's my term back in 2014. So starting with explaining the signaling basics and doing some knowledge checks at the end so that people can really check whether they have understood everything. Then I talk about the foundations of CBTC. And the intent there is for people, for the students doing the training, to appreciate that CBTC is not that complicated, really. If it's explained simply enough, it's actually relatively simple and commonsensical to understand. And one tool of doing this or explaining this are what I call frameworks. And then I'm talking about functions of CBTC, benefits, supply strategies, in order to deepen the understanding and really create a solid foundation of CBTC knowledge. And then I talk about tips and tricks for applying CBTC. And all this in common has made this arguably the most successful CBTC training in the world over the last 10 years. And these days, it's called CBTC Masterclass, and it's being offered through the Informa Academy. So, but then what's next? So you've got this foundation, or maybe you already have some existing prior knowledge of CBTC, and now you want a deep dive. Now you want to get into the success secret. So you say, well, that foundation is all nice, but what's the next step? And I give you a couple of next steps. So first of all, the entire topic of mindset is so much leading edge in the industry that it really required a separate training course. I couldn't do it justice by just having a training course with like 27 lessons and have 1 or 2 lessons on mindset. That's basically an afterthought. I do have a lesson on mindset in the CBTC Masterclass at the very end, but that's more like raising awareness for this whole topic of mindset, saying, okay, well, if you want to deep dive into this, that really requires a completely separate training course. And to my knowledge, it's the only training in the entire world that's teaching about the mindset of a high capacity relay. So here it is. The title of the training is very aptly High Capacity Relay Mindset. How does the training work? I'm introducing the concept of 2 different mindsets. One is the old world of conventional signaling or legacy signaling, which I call the legacy mindset. And then on the other hand, that's the mindset where you want to go. That's the mindset of a high capacity relay, which I call the high capacity mindset. So these are basically the 2 camps or the 2 different thinking models of mindset. So in the training course, I'm providing 12 lessons with 5 examples each of a legacy mindset, and then juxtaposed to that, the according high capacity mindset. So how would be your thinking in the old world, and how should be your thinking in the new world? And 12 times 5, that's 60. So I'm giving you 60 examples of that in the training course, and not just saying, well, that's the old mindset, that's the new mindset. I'm also teaching what is the problem of the old mindset and how can it be in the way of being successful in applying CBTC. And I'm also giving you tips and tricks how to get from the old to the new mindset. What I'm also doing in this training, and that just developed over time, that I thought, well, actually, I should also teach a bit of the theory of change. And then I realized this is not just useful for your railway career, this is actually for any change in your life, where you're basically going from one circumstance to another, to a new circumstance, and you need to change, or something is changing in your environment. How you handle that change, how you embrace that change, this is what these additional 12 lessons are about, which I call transformation guides. And so in total, you've got 24 lessons in that training, 12 examples for mindset shifts, and 12 transformation guides. So I packaged all this in a 6 weeks program, which starts on the 27th of October, so later this month. And it's the first time that I'm running this training together with the Informa Academy. The total duration of the training is more than 9 hours. And this is, of course, eligible for CPD. That's continuous professional development. So if you are in an organization that requires continuous professional development, for example, the IRSE or Engineers Australia, in my case, I'm in both, then this training would definitely be eligible for being claimed in your continuous professional development. And on top of those 9 hours of video lessons, you also have 3 live interactive sessions. It's a bit like this, but the difference is that I can see your face on camera as well. You can ask me questions live. I'm going to answer them. So to an extent, how we do the Q&A at the end, but you basically interact directly with me, not through Imran. So that's an additional 3 hours that you could, of course, also claim for your continuous professional development. And then you have workbooks and quizzes, and you also have a Q&A discussion forum where you can basically post questions and they will be answered by me in person. So for an online training, it's a very interactive way of teaching that. So you're not being left alone with your video lessons. You are in continuous interaction with your trainer, with me, if you want that. So the other thing, how you can dive into success secrets of CBTC, is a very new training course that I just developed very recently, which will run for the first time early next month. And it's, again, to my knowledge, the first advanced CBTC training in the world, and accordingly, it's the only one that really goes beyond the foundations of CBTC that you would have here in the CBTC masterclass. So it's called Advanced Global CBTC Insights because that's what it is. So we're talking advanced insights and we're talking global, so really from around the world. And what's the easiest way to prove that it's really from around the world? You have teachers from around the world that share their knowledge with you one-on-one. So I have done all the legwork for you. What I mentioned previously, you have to travel the world and you have to find all the experts and talk to all the different people. I've done all of that for you, and you're saving travel costs as well. So what this training provides is 18 long-form presentations, meaning presentations that take between 30 and 60 minutes. And those presentations are from international experts that give you top insights for their CBTC applications. And what I've done in addition to that is not just giving you those presentations directly from the horse's mouth or from the expert's mouth. I added a commentary, like a didactic commentary, to turn it into a targeted learning program. So I looked at all of those presentations, like, okay, well, where is the thread here? Where is the learning path from A to B? And then I added commentary to basically highlight certain things of all of these presentations and basically turn it into a structured, targeted training program. It's again a 6 weeks program, so it's meant to be completed in 6 weeks. It's starting on the 3rd of November. And there's almost 16 hours of content. As I said, 18 long form presentations between 30 and 60 minutes. So it all comes up to almost 16 hours of specialized advanced CBTC content, which of course, again, is eligible for continuous professional development if you are into that. Again, there are 3 live interactive sessions, one in the 2nd week of the training, and the 4th week, and the 6th week of the training. And again, you have workbooks and quizzes and a discussion forum for questions and answers where you can interact directly with me throughout your entire training. So now that I explained this to you, I wanted, as promised, come back to the initial claims that Informa did for this webinar. So what they wanted you to take out of it. So I'm addressing all of those 4 bullet points one by one, starting with the first one. Why do some CBTC projects thrive while others fall short? And I think one of the success factors there, or I don't know whether you want to call it success secrets, but it's definitely one of the factors for success, is if you have a project that can facilitate CBTC experts that are willing to share their knowledge. So what you can't really use is somebody who knows a lot about this stuff, but they don't want to share. They basically want, well, I'm the super guru. I don't want to make you a super guru as well. So I basically keep my cards close to my chest. And yeah, well, I will tell you what I'm doing, but I'm not really explaining it to you so that you don't get too smart yourself. So, and then you have some projects that are not that successful. And those are often projects where people start or try to reinvent the wheel. They basically say, well, we don't really know much about CBTC, but I mean, how hard can it be? We have a supplier and they know a lot about CBTC. They will do all the right things and so on. And then they will learn the hard way that it's not quite like that. A second success factor, I think, for CBTC projects is lessons learned. And these days, lessons learned is really a buzzword that everybody is using, but very few people or very few projects are really doing. So firstly, of course, you need a lot of exposure to other projects from around the world, or maybe from other cities in your country, if they have CBTC. And then you need to understand the reasons why those projects were successful, or maybe why they were not so successful, in order to learn and avoid the same mistakes that those projects made. And of course, this is something that I often see done at the beginning of a project. Say, oh, yeah, we want to do lessons learned and so on. And then they have a look at some project references, and then they come up with a table where they summarize all those lessons learned. And then they have a document, and then they put the document somewhere in a drawer. And then there's a new person coming on board, and then everybody forgets about what was the lessons learned. So the real successful projects really hold those lessons learned high, and they really continuously apply that. They have almost like a set of rules from those lessons learned, where they continuously check themselves. Are we violating any of those lessons learned, or are we still proceeding in line with those lessons? So that's the second success factor, which you very often see in successful CBTC projects, and the non so successful CBTC projects, they often neglect this or don't have this at all. And a third success factor really is, again, that mindset shift, where people need to change their way of thinking. They can't continue with the same way of thinking that worked in the old world, pre CBTC, in the old world of conventional signaling, many of those old ways of thinking are not just not helpful for CBTC, they may actually obstruct the optimum use of CBTC. Coming to the second promise for this webinar, how to apply CBTC the right way to optimize capacity. Difficult question, so let's see what I've come up with here. One thing that I'm also teaching in my masterclass training that's really, really important, in layman's terms, you can't polish a turd. We don't know what a turd is, like a cow turd, and you can't polish it. You can do whatever, you can try whatever you like. You're not getting it shiny. It just doesn't work. So, and it's a similar thing here. So you have to have a railway that is suitable for supporting CBTC, for making the most out of CBTC. And there are two factors to it. One factor is the railway infrastructure, and the second one is the operation of that railway. And both of these factors need to be supportive of CBTC. And one way of doing this is to learn from successful metro railways that have introduced high capacity. And you will probably find that they operate in a very different way than what your railway used to operate. And it gives you an idea where you need to develop to. The second one is, if you want to optimize capacity, it needs to fit to your railway. So your specific railway may have very specific capacity targets that are very different from other railways because of different circumstances. So the important thing here is to set realistic targets for the capacity, and you get this done through so-called network modeling. And that gives you an idea what should be possible, what capacity should be possible on your specific railway, because you model the behavior of that railway under CBTC. And then you need to get those modeling results confirmed by the people delivering the CBTC. And these are your potential CBTC suppliers. And you need to do that before you award them a contract, because you need to agree with them on a capacity target that is actually achievable by them. And then you need to verify that target capacity, firstly with modeling while you are doing the project, and then at the end also with practical testing, because otherwise you would never know whether you can really achieve the target capacity in practice. And yes, again, mindset shift. Yeah, because if you want to adopt a new way of operating at higher capacity, you will have to change the way of thinking in your organization to some extent. So again, even for the second question, mindset again plays an important role. Promise number 3, actionable strategies for rail professionals across all disciplines. Now, I think there's nothing better than an intentional, structured topical training. So we talk about CBTC, we want a certain audience to learn A, B, C, and D, and this is how we do it. This is an intentional training, a structured training, and a training 100% on the topic. And that training, in order to be suitable for all kinds of rail disciplines, it needs to target the understanding not just by the signaling experts, but also by all the what I call non-signaling people. So you need to address them as your target audience to make sure that everybody understands everything. And if non-signaling people understand it, then obviously the signaling people will understand it as well, because they have a better foundation to lift off from. All the courses that I mentioned today, and there are a few more that I will mention in a moment, they have proven in practice for many years that they have worked across all kinds of technical and non-technical disciplines in railways. And then lastly, promise number 4, we are almost done, how to achieve global best practice in CBTC implementation. And this, I think, has two parts. Number one is you need to get yourself exposed to best practices. So you need to understand what best practices are in the first place. And then secondly, you have to identify what are the relevant ones for your specific railway. And as I said before, there's no one size fits all. So there may be something that was very successful in a certain railway that's absolutely not applicable to your very own railway. So every CBTC project has different success stories. And the more you see, the more likely it is that you find the success stories or part of the success stories that are really the right ones for you, which means for the railway that you are working on introducing CBTC. And the training courses that I discussed today, they will save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of missteps on the way. And now we come to the promised giveaway and also to the Q&A. So the next slide that I'm showing you is an overview of all the training courses that I'm providing through the Informa Connect Academy. It shows you when the start dates are, so including the two courses that I talked previously, also the CBTC Masterclass, which again starts in March next year. It gives you the duration and also the registration links. And as you can see on top, your takeaway is, as a thank you for participating in that webinar, if you want to use any of those trainings, you get a 10% discount if you contact the Informa Academy, and they can basically verify that you were registered for this webinar. So with that, thank you very much for your time and for staying along for so long. I hand back to Imran. In case we have some questions, I'm very happy to answer them. Thank you for listening and looking forward to the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dr. Frank. It was really insightful and knowledgeable, definitely for myself itself. We just to remind everyone on the line that this session has been recorded, and then the recording will be shared in next 2 to 3 days with everyone who's attended the webinar. Also, I think Dr. Frank has made my job easier to explain the discount on his upcoming courses, whether it's this year or for next year. By all means, these courses are modular online courses, which is delivered basically online. You can basically attend them with your own pace as per your own requirements, wherever you are in the world. So we're pleased to offer a 10% discount basically on our upcoming rail courses. You can contact my colleague Dean on the contact details given on the slide right now. Dr. Frank, we do have a few questions that I'd like to go through with you. The first one we have from Martin. I think it's a twofold question, so I would probably take first question. Martin says, as a client, is it possible to provide a specification to a supplier that is only functional in nature, or does the client have to provide some technical specification as well?
It's a very good question. It's a very intelligent question, and I'm not saying this for every question, so that's not like my standard thing of saying, oh, nice question. I think one of the success secrets actually is for a client to really stick with a functional specification or an outcome-based specification. The last thing a railway should do is try to impose technical details on a CBTC supplier. That's one of the biggest mistakes that you could do. Why? Because you don't understand the CBTC product of that supplier anywhere near as good as that supplier. So you may say, well, I want a certain function to be implemented like this. And the supplier may say, well, yeah, but that's not what we do in our product. That's not how our product works. And then the worst thing that can happen is if the railway insists on that function and say, well, then you have to change your product. And what that leads to is a bespoke, I mean, in most cases, the CBTC supplier would say, no, no, we're not changing our product. Thank you very much. It's been successful in the global world market for metros. We're not going to change it for a client in where, Australia or somewhere like that. So they won't do it. Or if they do it, it will create a bespoke solution just for your railway. And bespoke means it's an orphan. It's a solution which will not be maintained in the long term, or it will be additional effort for the supplier to maintain this. The motivation of the supplier to do something for you will fall drastically. So that would be a huge mistake. So the way you should specify your CBTC application is really outcome related. What's the target capacity I want to achieve? What level of automation do I want to get? What are the energy savings that I'm trying to achieve by introducing CBTC? So things like this, yeah, like real outcomes that you want to get. You want to achieve a certain punctuality of the train services, a certain level of on-time running. So those are the things you want to transport. You want to run a certain number of trains per hour. Those are the things that should be in a specification, but it should not have technical bits. Great question, really. The second part?
Sure. Yeah, the second part, I think you may have partly answered, but I would just explain here. If Martin is asking if technical details are required from the client, does this mean that they need to have some knowledge of the CBTC technicalities, or how much knowledge is needed then?
Well, probably yes. I mean, it's very hard, and that's why I said that the client specification should really be outcome based and functional. It should not be technical, because how much knowledge do you think you need about that CBTC product? I mean, firstly, the time when you specify is normally before you start procuring. So at that point in time, you don't even know which CBTC product you're going to get. You don't even know who is responding to your tender, to your procurement effort. I mean, you can have some previous expression of interest or some kind of a shortlisting prospect. And maybe a part of that, you can basically ask for information about the product. And if every supplier gives you, say, 50 pages of document within that, good job if you really achieve that much from them. So what do you do then? Now you read 50 pages and now you think you know about their CBTC product. You can see it doesn't work that way. Yeah. So, and that's one of the main reasons why you should shy away from technical requirements. Yeah. So you should not try to tell the supplier how many transponders need to be in the field, or how far apart should the transponders be. Operational outcomes, yes. You can, for example, say, I want my trains to stop at this point along the platform. And this station is here, and that station is there, and that station is there. I want to have my station stop times, my dwell times to be that long, X seconds. So these are the kind of requirements that you can put on the supplier. You can say, what happens in case of a train delay? How should the CBTC system react to it? But again, that's an operational outcome. That's a functional outcome. It's not like a technical specification. This is how you need to do your CBTC. That you shouldn't do as a railway. Never.
Sure. Thank you. Takes me to the next question from Abhinay. He's asking, what is the difference between the two training types? I guess he's referring to high capacity railway mindset and the global CBTC Insight course, I guess.
The difference between the two training, well, they are basically covering very different topics. I mean, the mindset training is really about these mindset things. So it's about the legacy mindset on the one side and the high capacity mindset on the other side, and understanding how the legacy mindset may be an obstacle for successfully applying CBTC and how to get from that legacy mindset to the high capacity mindset. So this is what this training is about. And then there are these additional transformation guides as part of that training that really explains certain things, how you can change. Yeah. So how will it get easier for you to adopt new things, to change from an old thing to a new thing? That's pretty much what it is. The other thing is really more specific on CBTC. I mean, the mindset training does have many examples, mindset examples, with coming from a CBTC background. Yeah, I developed that training based on insights from my CBTC masterclass training. The advanced CBTC training is really CBTC specific presentations from around the world. So, for example, you can't imagine how to do zero disruption delivery. How can a railway implement CBTC without shutting down services? Well, it was done before. One example is Hong Kong. So you will have somebody from Hong Kong explaining to you in detail how they have done it. So it's not like some theory or so, it's practical. They have done it like this, and this is step by step by step. How could they get it done without interrupting any services? So previously you may have thought it's impossible, and now you say, well, okay, what if we do the same thing as Hong Kong have done, we can do it as well, right? So this is just one example how you can basically learn from other railways without the need of identifying, the guys in Hong Kong have done something fantastic. And then you need to say, okay, how do I get this information? Who in Hong Kong do I need to talk to? Is this person willing to talk to me? Are they going to share their secrets with me? Do they really give me all the details? I've done all of this. So I've identified this as a very important topic that's useful for everybody to learn. I have identified Hong Kong as a practical example where it has worked and it's proven to work. I have identified the right expert in Hong Kong to talk about this. I have convinced him to talk to me about this. And I've recorded this presentation so that I can share it in that training course. And on top of that, I basically gave my commentary to put it into a learning framework. So this is what the other training is about. And that one example, multiply it by 18, and you get an idea of what this advanced global insights training is about.
Thank you, Dr. Frank. We have one more question from Amric. He's saying, hi, Dr. Frank. Thank you for your excellent presentation. I may be interested in the training, but I have a couple of questions to ask you, please. I have worked with modern ATC and CBTC systems for over 25 years in a design capacity. I don't think I need mindset training, but what other specific training do you think I may benefit from? Furthermore, on a practical level, how would this work for someone based in the UK and working full-time?
Well, with regards in the UK, I mean, the training is provided by video lessons, and you can watch the video lessons at your leisure in your own time. So depending on your circumstances, you may have your full-time job, then you come home, you've got young children, you want to have dinner with your family, but in the evening you've got an hour time, or you can allocate 1 hour per day for your training. And that should be enough for actually completing the training course in parallel to doing your work. I mean, I'm not saying go on holidays for 6 weeks or so. People normally can't afford that, but it's something where you can do your training in addition to your normal life. If you say, well, I don't have any time at all, then of course you can't do a training. You can't do any training. You can't even go to the toilet if you say, I don't have time for nothing. But I mean, how realistic is this? Yeah. So if you're serious about this training, then I think you can manage to take the training and basically complete it with a relatively manageable amount of effort every day. I mean, what you can do, for example, there are some presentations that take, say, half an hour. You do have time for half an hour in the evening. So you can basically watch one of the lessons, and that's half an hour or 45 minutes, and that's your lesson for the day. And then the next day you realize something, oh, this is taking an hour and 15 and I only have 45 minutes. Well, guess what? You can basically stop the video somewhere in the middle and then take the second part the next day. So for example, what I've done for the advanced CBTC training, I basically took a presentation, say it's a 60-minute presentation, and then I cut it roughly in half. So you will have the first 30 minutes, then you have the first sets of comments from me, then you have the second part of the presentation, and then you have a second set of comments at the end. So quite easily, you could basically stop in the middle after my first set of comments, and then the next day you come back to the same lesson and you watch the second part with my second set of comments. And by doing that, you have basically the training broken down in very manageable chunks. Now, with regards to the live interactive sessions, they are at times that may be a bit early for people from Europe. So it may be something I don't really quite know. They're normally at 3 o'clock Sydney time, which depending on the time of the year with daylight saving, may be anything between 5 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock in the morning UK time. So some people get up this early. So I did have training participants from UK that attended live sessions at 4 a.m. their time. I mean, that's hardcore, I must say. And I really raised my head for people doing this. If you say, well, that's too early, or I need to sleep, or I need to catch the train to go to work, there are recordings. Just watch the recordings. And again, you can watch the recordings in the evenings, or you can binge watch at the weekend, whatever suits your schedule and your life circumstances. So I've had people from the UK participating in my trainings before, and it worked successfully. So I'm pretty confident that you can do it as well, as long as you are determined to really dedicate a certain amount of time to the training. So if I say, well, there's, for example, the mindset training, there are 9 hours of video content over 6 weeks. So 6 weeks is 42 days, 9 hours divided by 42 days. It's something like, I don't know, 15 minutes a day on average. If you say you don't have that time, I can't help you. But I'm telling you that the amount of time that you need to dedicate to the training is manageable. It should be manageable for everybody. And if somebody says, I don't have time for this, it's the same that people said, I don't have time 5 minutes in the morning to brush my teeth, or in the evening. And then 20 years later, oh, my teeth have fallen out. How could that happen? Well, because you didn't make the 5 minutes to brush your teeth, if you know what I mean. And it's the same with your professional development. If you say, I don't have time for my professional development, I have to work, then, well, guess what? Then you will end up without professional development. You have your on-the-job training, but you don't have anything in addition to that. And at some point in time, there will be people who have done those additional trainings, and then there are others who don't, because they thought they don't have time. So I hope that helps, but I think it should be manageable. And I mean, if you struggle with anything, there's a discussion forum. Just ask me a question or ask for help or so, and you will be helped.
Thank you, Dr. Frank. Next question is from Sam. He's asking, is there any course targeting application of Senelic RAMs requirements, specifically in relation to CBTC system assurance?
I would not for me, but I think that the Informa Academy is offering something on that front. So what I would ask you to do is to contact Dean under the contact details that you see on the slide here. So there's the telephone number with the international code for Australia, 61, 2 is for Sydney, and then the rest is the telephone number. Or you can send him an email and then basically tell him what you want to learn about. And then he can tell you whether there is something in the portfolio of Informa. but it won't be taught by me. I'm not going into details on Senelec standards, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Dr. Frank, you have time for a couple more questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. So the next one is from Venkat. He's asking, how does course training help us to improve our career?
It's hard to predict. I mean, obviously, I cannot give you any guarantee that you will get this and this and this benefit out of it. What I can give you is a guarantee that you will be able to understand everything that I'm teaching in the training. But then I give you an example. Let's just say, let's just stick with the example of that zero disruption delivery, because I think this is something that probably hardly anyone in the industry teaches, and I do, and I told you about this example from Hong Kong. So let's just imagine you are in a situation where you're planning your CBTC project, and the normal way of doing it, like everybody will tell you, this is how we need to do it. We need to shut down the railway here, and then we need to shut it down again here, and then we need to shut it down again there, and shut it down again there. So what happens if you shut down your railway repeatedly for services? I can tell you what happens. Your passengers will go away. They will say, I cannot rely on the train service. I wanted to go home on Friday night, and I had to take a 3-hour bus replacement service because the railway was shutting down. And now 2 months later, they're shutting down again. You know what? Screw it. I'm using my car. And then they're using the car, and then they are lost to you as a railway passenger. And I've seen this happening. I've seen patronage numbers drop significantly and often never return to full scope because of repeated shutdowns. So, but then you come in and you say, well, I've done this training course there. There is a way how we can deliver CBTC without disrupting services. And I said, well, tell me more about this. And suddenly you are the superstar within your organization that brings in this knowledge. And then you say, well, you want to learn more about this? Well, there's this guy, Doc Frank, over there. Maybe we give him a call and see whether we can get some more information. Or maybe we can contact the railway in Hong Kong, and maybe, I mean, MTR, the operator there, they have their own consultancy. So if you ask them nicely and pay them some money, they will send you a team of specialists over to you and help you implementing this. Yeah, so it really depends on the circumstance. It could be that just one nugget from the training course, if applied at the right point in time, could basically like rocket your like shoot up your career like a shooting star. Or it could be nothing happens because you don't work for CBTC for the next 5 years. So for me, it's really hard to say how specifically it would benefit you. But what happens in these trainings, both in the CBTC masterclass and well, also in the mindset training, let's take the mindset training for a moment. So what happens often is you sit in a meeting, you talk about CBTC, and you're basically getting stuck in a rut. And when you had this mindset training, you will realize, you will identify that some people, some of your colleagues may be in that old mindset. When you know about this problem, you can address this problem. You may say, well, okay, well, what you're basically saying is this and this and this and this. This is how it was of legacy signaling. However, in CBTC, it looks like this. And so you will be able, based on your learnings from the mindset training, you will be able to steer a discussion in a more productive direction. What will it do to your career? Will you get a promotion? Will you get a salary increase? I don't know. I don't know who your boss is. I don't know what your circumstances are. I don't know whether you will be in the right situation to apply it. But I hope you can see from those examples that there's definitely opportunity where you might find yourself in the perfect situation to apply your knowledge, your learnings from the training. And then depending on the circumstance, it may boost your career. It may help your career. It may prevent you from being laid off. It's all possible, but none of this obviously can be guaranteed. I mean, it would be illegal for me to guarantee anything like that, as you can imagine. So I hope that helps. I hope it gives you an idea, and yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Frank. The next question is from Amrik. He's basically like to hear your thoughts on the application of secondary train detection in a Go A4 CBTC metro system. Is there a cost benefit?
Well, yes, and funny you mentioned that, because there aren't that many metros in the world that really do without secondary train detection. There are only a very few, but some of them have been very successful. And one of those examples is Dubai. And actually, one of the lessons in the advanced CBTC Insight trainings is actually a presentation from Dubai. So I have one of the key experts who has worked on that project, who was responsible for the CBTC implementation on that project without secondary train detection. So you basically get firsthand the information how one of the most successful metros in the world without secondary train detection, how they have done it. And yeah, and one of the reasons that they had was cost savings, but it's not the only one. But it's definitely interesting to hear about it from a practical perspective. So I'm not reading from a brochure. I really talked to a person, or I had a person talking to me who has really done it, who has experienced it firsthand, who said, well, that's why we did it. This is how we did it. This is what the outcome is. And this is why we think it's a good idea. And we would do it again if we have the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Frank. Probably the last question for the session today for you, from Emric again. He is basically mentioning here regarding the changing mindset. I have an observation to share. I'm currently working with a client who is unfamiliar with CBTC and struggling to understand how a CBTC metro system can operate without trackside signals.
Yes. So yeah, that's really difficult. Maybe I'll tell you a little anecdote from my own practice. For many years I was responsible for the CBTC planning for a major city here in Australia, and I basically kept talking to people and explaining all the benefits that they can get from CBTC and how it would work and so on and so forth. So at some point in time, we decided to send a few key personnel on a site visit, on an excursion to Europe. So I basically helped them organize a trip to Europe, going to various places in Europe where they had applications of CBTC. And so 3 or 4 people from the client organization went to Europe for a week or so. They visited several metro operators. And then they came back. And then they presented their findings back to management. And we sat in a meeting where they basically told all the things that they experienced in Europe. And then the general manager looked me straight in the face and he said, Frank, that's the first time I believe you. And I wondered why that was. And then I thought, okay, well, that's what it was. All the stuff that I've been telling them for the last 3 years, what CBTC can do, they thought I'm reading from a science fiction book. They couldn't imagine that these things would really be possible with CBTC. Oh yeah, Frank is telling us fairy tales. And then they went to Europe, like the trusted personnel of the general manager went to Europe. And then they came back and they reported back what they do in Europe. And he said, that's the same stuff that Frank's been telling us for the last 3 years. But I never believed him because I thought, well, that's too good to be true. But now my own trusted people tell me the same thing, and they've seen it with their own eyes. Yeah. So this is really something where, yeah, well, you need to see it in order to believe it, or maybe for some people a training course will do. So it's yeah, well all I can say is you've got, yeah, well, you've got a certain uphill battle, but it would help if people understood CBTC better, like the foundations, which I'm teaching in the CBTC masterclass. It would help if you find people are getting stuck in an old mindset, in a legacy mindset. It might help if they went to the mindset training and basically saw, oh well, there's an alternative way of looking at that. So sometimes it's just, I don't know, one or two people in the organization that can be the starting point of something bigger. Yeah, so in the example that I just told you, there were 3 or 4 people that went to Europe for a week, and then they came back and they basically spread the knowledge across the entire organization. And a similar thing can happen with a training course. So if you have somebody who is, I don't know, a CBTC skeptic or something like that, and you send them to a training course, they may be completely turned around at the end of the training. And they may come back and say, oh, this stuff is fantastic. I just didn't realize, and now I do know what it can do, and this is fantastic. And suddenly they are the biggest champions of CBTC. Yeah. Or they may say, well, actually, this training course was so good. There are, I don't know, 3 more people in our organization. They should have the same training. Or we need to think about an in-house course. And then you can talk to the Informa Academy. Well, what can we do to have something specific for our railway or so? Yeah. Or what can we do to have, I don't know, a live online training session with Doc Frank? Or how can we maybe even have a live training? Yeah, depending on where in the world it is. So it's knowledge is power, and having people, especially in a field that's as new as CBTC, if you come from a legacy signaling background, it can be extremely eye-opening to have some, you would probably call them influencer. In the social media space, you would call these people influencer, because what they say matters to the rest of the organization. So if they say, I'm a big CBTC skeptic, well, this is the message that the rest of the organization gets. If they went to a training and they come back and say, oh, CBTC is fantastic and here are all the benefits and so on, then this is the message that gets spread across the organization. So, I mean, you can get into a deeper discussion with Dean, like contact details on top of the slide. And through Dean, you can basically also get in contact with me in order to get some, I don't know, some customized recommendation of what your organization could do training-wise. If we get to know your more specific circumstances, I mean, I would obviously be interested in understanding which is the railway you're working from, where are you in your project life cycle? Are you in the planning stage? Are you already doing procurement? Are you already into delivery, project delivery, implementation? So understanding this a bit better would probably help. And we can't do it here. We can't do it live in front of everybody. But feel free to reach out to Dean, and I would be happy if I know more of your circumstance. I would be happy to come up with some ideas that are a bit more specific to your case, if that helps you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Frank. I think you've taken up very good and interesting stories and experience that you shared with us, and they're very fascinating, very interesting as well. I'm sure the audience would have enjoyed and learned a lot from those insights and experiences. With that, I would like to thank you very much for your time today and extending your time, obviously, to answer those questions. So thank you so much for your time today. And I would like to thank all the audiences who were present to attend the webinar till the end. We will be sharing the recording in next 2 to 3 days. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, as Dr. Frank mentioned, that you can get in touch with my colleague Dean via phone or via email in front of you at the moment. So thanks again, Dr. Frank, and
and
hope you all the
feel
best.
free to share your recording with your colleagues. So if you think you have a colleague in your organization that may also be interested in this, then those recordings are not private. So feel free to share it with interested colleagues. And yeah, that's the last word from me.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye all.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.